You're watching Betrayal and Beyond. It wasn't a lipstick stain or a late-night text that broke me. It was an invoice, a single crisp line item on our joint credit card statement for $472.50 from a place called the Gilded Cage. A cocktail lounge so exclusive you needed a reservation just to breathe their filtered air. I knew the place. We'd joked about going there once for a big anniversary, but Chloe had laughed it off. Too stuffy, Leo. We're not that kind of couple. Apparently, she was. Just not with me. I was sitting at our polished oak dining table, the one she'd picked out, surrounded by the life I thought we'd built. I was the stable one, the architect with a steady job, the guy who managed the spreadsheets and paid the bills on time, so she could fly. And she did fly. Her boutique marketing agency, Aura Creative, was her passion, her baby. It started in our spare bedroom with a secondhand laptop and was now a rising star in the city. I was immensely proud. I was also, it turns out, the primary investor in a life I had no part in. When I asked her about the charge, she didn't even look up from her phone, just waved a dismissive hand. Oh, that was a client thing. Had to woo the new organic skincare line. You know how it is. I didn't know how it is. And I knew she had a corporate card for exactly that kind of wooing. A little red flag went up, the kind you try to ignore, telling yourself you're being paranoid. But architects are trained to notice misalignments. We see the tiny stress fracture in the foundation long before the wall comes crashing down. So I didn't push. I just said, sounds expensive, and went back to my laptop. But I didn't go back to work. I opened the last 6 months of our credit card statements. It was like pulling a single loose thread and watching the entire tapestry of our marriage unravel right there in glowing pixels. The Gilded Cage wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern. There was Viridian, a rooftop restaurant where a table for two costs more than our first couch. The Onyx Hotel, not for a room, but for multiple visits to its secluded spa. Jewelry stores, a weekend trip to a vineyard 4 hours away. A trip, she told me, was a solo wellness retreat to prevent burnout. I just need to find myself again, Leo, she'd said, kissing my forehead with a look of manufactured melancholy. Each transaction was a pinprick. Alone, they were explainable. A client dinner here, a necessary business trip there. But together, they formed a constellation of betrayal. She wasn't just cheating. She was using our money, my money, to build a completely separate, luxurious life behind my back. The supportive husband was funding the affair. The irony was so sharp, it almost made me laugh. But the laughter died in my throat. This wasn't just about money or sex. It was about the calculation, the sheer, cold-blooded effort it took to maintain this lie. To come home to me, kiss me, complain about a difficult client, all while the taste of another man's expensive wine was still on her lips. The real discovery, the one that turned my grief into something colder and harder, came a few nights later. I couldn't sleep. The image of her smiling at someone else across a candlelit table was burned into my mind. I went downstairs for a glass of water and saw her laptop on the counter, open and sleeping. We shared everything, passwords, accounts, a life. It was a point of pride for us, or so I thought. I opened it, my heart hammering against my ribs. I told myself I was just looking for confirmation, maybe a name, an email, something to make it real. I found our shared cloud drive, the one we use for taxes and important documents. And there, nestled between mortgage underscore papers and vacation underscore photos, was a folder I'd never seen before. It was innocuously named Project Nightingale. My first thought was that it was a new client. But when I clicked it open, my blood ran cold. It wasn't a marketing plan. It was an exit strategy. Her exit strategy. There were documents, spreadsheets, detailing a division of our assets, favoring her, of course. Screenshots of text conversations with someone saved only as in. In them, she complained about me, about how I was predictable, safe, how I didn't challenge her anymore. She painted me as a passionless, boring anchor holding her back from the life she deserved. Then I found the script, a literal Word document titled The Conversation. It was a rehearsed, point-by-point speech she was planning to give me. It was full of therapeutic jargon designed to make her sound like a victim of circumstance, not a perpetrator of deceit. Phrases like, "I need to honor my truth," and "It's not that I don't love you, I'm just not in love with you anymore," and the final, crushing line, "I hope one day you can understand that this is for the best for both of us." But the worst part, the absolute gut punch that shattered any remaining piece of the man who loved her, was a subfolder titled Narrative. Inside were drafts of social media posts and emails to our mutual friends. She was preemptively crafting the story of our breakup. In her version, she was the brave woman escaping a quietly controlling and emotionally stifling marriage. She was building her new world on the ashes of my reputation. I stood there in the silent kitchen, bathed in the blue light of the screen, and I finally understood. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a fling. It was a meticulously planned operation. She wasn't just leaving me. She was liquidating our life together, assets and reputation included. And the most chilling part? I was paying for all of it. The discovery didn't break me. It didn't make me want to cry. It forged something new inside me. A quiet, diamond-hard clarity. She had her strategy. Now I would have mine. I closed the laptop, the screen going dark, but the words still burned behind my eyes. Asterisk quietly controlling, emotionally stifling. Asterisk the narrative she was building was a masterpiece of manipulation. In her story, I wasn't a supportive partner. I was a cage. And she, the brave little bird, was preparing to fly free. For a moment, a wave of pure, hot rage washed over me. I wanted to smash the laptop. I wanted to wake her up and throw her meticulously crafted words in her face. But that's what the old Leo would have done. The predictable Leo. The Leo she described in her notes. Instead, I took a deep, steadying breath. An architect doesn't start a demolition by swinging a sledgehammer wildly. You study the blueprints. You find a load-bearing walls, the structural weaknesses. You plan a controlled collapse. Her Project Nightingale was her blueprint, and she had foolishly left it out for the demolition expert to find. I went back to the shared drive. I didn't delete the folder. That would have been a rookie mistake, an alarm bell she would have heard instantly. Instead, I copied everything. Every document, every screenshot, every draft of her reputation-saving emails. I created a new, encrypted drive, one she would never find, and named my own folder Project Demolition. The next morning was the hardest performance of my life. I woke up before her, made coffee the way she liked it, a splash of oat milk, no sugar, and sat at the kitchen table reading the news on my tablet as if it were any other Tuesday. When she came downstairs, wrapped in a silk robe, she smiled sleepily. "Morning, babe." "Morning," I said, not looking up from my screen. "Sleep well." "Like a log," she lied, pouring herself a cup of the coffee I'd just made. Crazy day ahead. We're finalizing the pitch for the Thorn account. Nicholas Thorn. N. The name clicked instantly. He was a venture capitalist, a minor celebrity in the tech world known for his ruthless investments and a carefully cultivated image of being a disruptor. Chloe had been talking about landing his firm for months, presenting it as the client that would catapult Aura Creative into the big leagues. She made it sound like a desperate, uphill battle. From the looks of her secret spreadsheets, the battle had been won long ago in hotel rooms and expensive restaurants, and I had financed the campaign. "That's great," I said, my voice betrayingly even. "Hope you land it. You've worked hard for it." "Thanks, Leo," she said, leaning over to kiss my cheek. Her perfume was a sweet, cloying scent I used to love. Now it smelled like deceit. "You're always so supportive. It means the world." The words from her breakup script echoed in my head. Asterisk, "You're a good man, Leo." You deserve someone who can appreciate your stability. Asterisk, she was already practicing, rehearsing her lines on an unwitting audience of one. For the next 2 weeks, I became the man she thought I was. I was the steady, predictable, slightly boring husband. I asked about her day. I feigned interest in her client drama. I rubbed her feet when she claimed to be exhausted from work. I was a ghost in my own life, observing, gathering data, and playing my part to perfection. Every time she looked at me with that faint, pitying smile, I felt a cold surge of power. She had no idea she was living in a house of cards, and I was the one who was going to pull out the foundation. My evenings were spent in my home office, the one place she never entered, calling it my hermit cave. While she was out at client dinners or networking events, I was meticulously deconstructing her world. I hired a discreet private investigator, a former forensic accountant, to trace the money. Not just her joint accounts, but the finances of her business. I had co-signed the original loan for Aura Creative. I was still a silent partner on paper, a fact I think she'd conveniently forgotten. They gave me the legal right to look. The accountant, a man named Miller who spoke in clipped, dispassionate sentences, was brutally efficient. He found things I never would have. Chloe had been siphoning money from her company, disguising personal expenses as business costs on a scale that bordered on fraud. The vineyard trip, the spa days, the jewelry, it was all funneled through Aura Creative, written off to reduce her tax burden while she used our joint money for the company's actual operating costs. She was bleeding us both dry to fund her fantasy life. But Miller's most important discovery was Nicholas Thorne. He wasn't just a client. He was on the verge of becoming a major investor in her agency. The deal was set to close in a month. His investment would buy him a controlling interest and would allow Chloe to buy out my initial stake, effectively erasing me from her professional life, just as she planned to erase me from her personal one. The Project Nightingale folder wasn't just about a breakup. It was a corporate takeover in miniature. I sat there, staring at the preliminary report from Miller, and the final pieces of my plan clicked into place. Chloe's greatest asset was her narrative, her brand, the image of the brilliant, self-made female entrepreneur. It was the aura in Aura Creative. Nicholas Thorne wasn't investing in her balance sheet, which was a mess. He was investing in her, in the story she sold. And I realized I didn't need to expose the affair. That was low-hanging fruit. It was emotional, messy. It would fulfill her narrative of a scorned, controlling husband. No, my revenge wouldn't be emotional. It would be strategic. It would be financial. It would be a business transaction. I found the date for her big announcement party, a catered affair at a chic art gallery to celebrate the new partnership between Aura Creative and Thorne's firm. It was in 3 weeks. Invitations had already been sent out to clients, media, and the city's business elite. It was meant to be her coronation. It would be her execution instead. I now had my stage, my audience, and my script. And unlike hers, mine would be based entirely on the truth. The day of the party, I felt a strange sense of calm, like the dead stillness in the air before a storm. Chloe was a whirlwind of frantic energy, flitting around our apartment, changing outfits 3 times and triple-checking the guest list. She was so consumed by her impending triumph that she barely noticed me. To her, I was just part of the furniture, a familiar fixture in the background of her spectacular life. "How do I look?" she finally asked, striking a pose in a sleek, blood-red dress. She looked stunning, a perfect picture of success. "Like you're about to own the world," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I wasn't lying. I just had a different interpretation of the phrase. "Don't be late, okay?" she said, grabbing her clutch. "It's important for us to look like a team." The irony was so thick, I could have choked on it. "I wouldn't miss it for anything," I replied, straightening my tie. I arrived at the gallery exactly 30 minutes after the party started, just as the champagne was flowing freely and the room was buzzing with conversation. I saw Chloe holding court, Nicholas Thorne by her side, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. They looked like a power couple, the king and queen of their own curated reality. Our friends, her clients, reporters from local business journals, they were all orbiting her, captivated by her aura. I made my way to the bar, nodding politely, accepting a glass of champagne, and playing the role of the proud, supportive husband. I let her have her moment. An architect knows that for a structure to collapse properly, it first needs to reach its maximum height. The moment came an hour later. Chloe tapped a glass for attention, a radiant smile plastered on her face. The crowd hushed. She stood on a small, elevated platform, Thorne next to her. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice resonating with practiced confidence. "Tonight is about the future. It's about the incredible synergy between Aura Creative and Thorne Industries. Nick has been more than a client. He's been a visionary partner, and together, we are going to redefine the industry." She went on, hitting all the key points from the narrative files I knew so well. Passion, authenticity, breaking barriers. Then, she made her fatal mistake. She looked over at me, standing near the back, and gave me a benevolent smile. "And I have to thank my husband, Leo," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "for holding down the fort and giving me the stable ground from which to fly." The room applauded politely. This was my cue. I didn't shout. I didn't cause a scene. I simply walked toward the front of the room, holding a sleek, leather-bound portfolio. As I approached, a confused silence fell over the crowd. Chloe's smile faltered, a flicker of panic in her eyes. Thorne's arm tightened around her. "Thank you, Chloe," I said, my voice calm and clear, amplified by the perfect acoustics of the gallery. "You're right. Stability is important. That's why I've always made sure to keep immaculate records." I opened the portfolio. It wasn't for her. It was for Nicholas Thorne. "Nick," I said, addressing him directly. As Chloe's founding partner and a signatory on her business loans, I felt a fiduciary duty to conduct some due diligence before you finalize your investment. "I believe this belongs to you." I handed him the portfolio. Inside was a professionally prepared, condensed version of Miller's report. It was all there in black and white. The fraudulent expense reports, the doctored invoices, the company's true, anemic profit margins hidden beneath a mountain of personal luxuries she'd billed to the business. The final page was a summary of how much of Thorne's initial consulting fees had been spent at the Gilded Cage, the Onyx Hotel, and a certain vineyard 4 hours away. It was a clear, undeniable portrait of embezzlement. Thorne's face, usually a mask of smug confidence, went pale as he flipped through the pages. The whispers in the room started as a low hum and grew into a wave of shocked murmurs. Chloe lunged for the portfolio, her eyes wild. "Leo, what is this? What are you doing?" I turned to her, my expression unreadable. "It's a project I've been working on. I call it radical honesty. You said you wanted to honor your truth. I'm just helping you get a head start." I then turned to the stunned audience. "Chloe is a master of narrative," I announced, my voice steady. "Her greatest creation isn't a marketing campaign. It's the story of herself, a story of a struggling genius. But every great story needs funding. And it turns out I wasn't the only investor." I let that hang in the air. Thorne slammed the portfolio shut. He looked at Chloe, not with love or concern, but with the cold fury of a man who has been played. His investment wasn't in a visionary. It was in a liability. A fraud. He didn't say a word to her. He just turned to his assistant, who was hovering nearby. "Kill the deal, and get our legal team on the phone. Now." He walked off the platform without a backward glance, the crowd parting for him like water. Chloe stood there alone, the blood red of her dress now looking like a warning. Her carefully constructed world hadn't just cracked, it had been leveled. Her clients, her friends, The media, they were all staring, not with admiration, but with the morbid curiosity of onlookers at a crash site. Her aura was gone. All that was left was the truth. She finally looked at me, her face a mask of disbelief and hatred. "I'm not in love with you anymore," she whispered, throwing the line from her script at me like a last, desperate weapon. I met her gaze, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing but a profound, quiet peace. "I know," I said. "Now we're even." I turned and walked out of the gallery, leaving her alone on the stage with the ruins of her beautiful lie. It's been 6 months. Chloe's agency collapsed under the weight of lawsuits and a ruined reputation. Thorne's firm sued her for misrepresentation, and several of her clients followed suit when the full extent of her financial shell game came to light. I heard she moved back in with her parents. I don't know for sure. I don't care. I sold the house. I took my half of the assets, the legitimate half, and started over. I left the big architectural firm and opened my own small practice, focusing on sustainable, honest design. The work is meaningful. I come home to a quiet apartment that feels like mine. It's not filled with expensive objects, but with light and peace. I didn't do it for revenge. Not really. I did it because an architect's job is to tear down what is unstable to make room for something that will last. My old life was built on a rotten foundation. Now, I'm finally building something true. Thanks for listening to this story on betrayal and beyond. Now, it's your turn. What part of this story stood out to you the most? Was it the discovery of the Project Nightingale folder or the final, calculated takedown at the party? We all face betrayal in different ways. Have you ever been in a situation where the smartest response wasn't emotional, but strategic? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. And remember, sometimes the best way to win isn't to fight, but to simply reveal the truth.